It's summer here in New York, which means it's really hot. I'm David, and I'm looking for the best way to enjoy an ice-cold cup of Sencha. Today I'm going to run a little experiment comparing cold brew versus freshly made iced tea. I'll show you how I make both types of tea, and then I'll do a side-by-side tasting comparing the different taste profiles each method produces. First up, cold brew. My favorite way to make cold brew Sencha is to use one of these. This is a portable cold brew bottle from Hario, which comes in two sizes, 160 milliliters, or the 400 ml size for the tea addicts like me. These come with a built-in mesh screen, so all you need to do is add some leaves to the bottom, fill it up with cold water, stick it in the fridge, and then you're ready to go. I've been asked a few times on what my personal recommendations are for cold brew recipes, and it really varies on what your day looks like. The basic recipe is 8 grams of tea and 400 ml of water. If you're putting the tea in the fridge, then you can use room temperature water as it will cool down in the fridge. But if you're going to take the tea on the go, then I would use the coldest water you can so that the tea stays as cold as it possibly can be. If you are taking the tea on the go straight away, then I would actually recommend using a little less tea, because if you're putting this tea in like your backpack or your shoulder bag, it's going to get jostled around, which will agitate the leaves and therefore speed up extraction. So to avoid the tea becoming bitter, I would actually use maybe 4 to 6 grams of tea. Of course, if the tea is too strong, you can always just top it up with a little bit of fresh cold water to dilute it a little bit. All this to say that cold brew is a very versatile and easily adaptable method of brewing, and it is much more forgiving than brewing hot. So there's no strict recipe. Feel free to experiment and find whatever works for you and your situation. To make a batch of cold brew tea, I'll need my cold brew bottle, a scale, some fresh water, and of course, tea. Today I'm using Senryu, which is a fukamushi or deep steam sencha produced by Kuma-en in Yame in Fukuoka Prefecture in the southern part of Japan. I like using fukamushi senchas for cold brew as the smaller leaf size really helps speed up the extraction process. On top of this, they're usually quite sweet and full-bodied, making them a perfect relaxing summer drink. First, I'll need to weigh out 8 grams of tea. That's more than 8 grams of tea. That's less than 8 grams of tea. And then I'll fill it up with cold water. Screw the lid on and place it in the fridge. And now we wait for 3 hours. Just kidding, here's one I prepared earlier. Setting this aside, it's time to make some iced tea. To do that, I'll have my tea, the same tea. I'll also need a glass and some ice, as well as kyusu. So for this glass, I've weighed out 200 grams of ice, or really just filled up the glass, over which I'll be pouring about 100 milliliters of tea. Now, because the tea is going to get diluted by the ice, I'll make the tea a little bit stronger. Normally, I'd brew 3 to 4 grams of sencha for 100 milliliters of water, and for fukamushi sencha, I'd only brew it for about 30 seconds. But to make it a little bit stronger, I'll brew it for a whole minute. Also, instead of using 80 degrees Celsius water, I'll use 70 to keep the temperature a little cooler so that less of the ice melts when I pour the tea in there. I still want my temperature to be accurate, so I'll preheat my kyusu, and then I'll put the tea in. I'll weigh out 4 grams of sencha, again I'm making it a little stronger than I normally would. And I'll add about 100 milliliters of hot water. And I'll start my timer and wait for 60 seconds. And now the timer is reaching 60 seconds, so I'll put the lid on the kyusu and pour the tea over the ice. So I've got my iced tea on this side, and I'll put my cold brew in this glass. If you're leaving your tea to sit in the fridge overnight or for a few hours, the brewed tea will settle. So you need to make sure everything is nice and mixed so that the strong tea at the bottom mixes with the water at the top. So now I have 2 ice-cold senchas, one cold brew and one iced tea. Let's try them both and compare them. First up, the iced tea. And that's definitely quite refreshing. It tastes very much like the hot tea, but cold, which I know sounds really obvious and redundant, but I have a point here. Doing iced tea like this, brewing hot and then chilling over ice, will make the tea taste very similar to the hot version of the tea, because when you brew tea with hot water, you extract more of the aromatic compounds, but also more of the catechins, which give the tea structure and sometimes a little bit of that bitterness or astringency. In comparison, if you brew tea with cold water, it has a bit more body and sweetness. Yeah, that's actually quite different. So this one with cold brew is sweeter, softer, rounder, and smoother in taste profile. The tea brewed with the hot water, then chilled over ice, has more of a standout flavor, which has more of the unique elements of this tea present at the forefront, whereas with the cold brew, it's a little more subdued and soft. So if you're looking for a sweeter, softer, easy to make type of tea, then I definitely recommend the cold brew. If you want to present a lot of the unique aromatic compounds that are present in a particular sencha, then I would suggest the iced tea method. Both methods produce a very refreshing and cooling beverage, which is very welcome on a day like today. Of course, each tea will brew up a little differently, so if you're going to make a hojicha or a different type of sencha, then you might want to adjust the recipe a little bit. But generally speaking, the pattern holds true. Cold brew produces a soft, smooth, round tea, and iced tea produces a little more of an aromatic and bright tasting tea. I encourage you to experiment with both of these methods, and if you find something that works even better for you, let me know down in the comments, because I'm always looking for a new way to brew tea. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you want to make sure you'll see all of our upcoming videos, hit subscribe. As always, I'll leave the links to the tea and teaware used in the video in the description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a cool, refreshing day. Unless it's winter for you, then why are you watching an iced tea video?